All right, hey guys, this is Graham at therecordingrevolution.com. Hope you're having an awesome day. Today I have with me a good friend of mine, Travis Whitmore. Travis is a professional drummer, touring drummer, session musician, studio owner, and I've known him from back in Virginia. I used to play on a worship band with him. He played drums with us, and an incredible musician, great drummer, an even better guy. And so it's cool to still be able to be connected with him. And today he's going to be talking to us about recording drums, as well as his service that he's got with Silver Lake Studio, which is his home studio where he's tracking drums professionally for people and sending you tracks over the web for your songs. So Travis, thanks for hanging out with us, buddy, and talking to us today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Graham.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so drums, we could always talk about drums. Everyone wants to record drums well, and they're the hardest thing to record. And the big budget studios will spend the most time on drums just because they're so complex, right? So what's of all the years you've been recording drums or been in studios and now recording drums in your own studio for people, what are some of the biggest things you've learned in terms of how do you get a good drum sound? What are some basic tips that we can know to be getting good drums in our studios?
Wow, yeah, well, it's a $1 million question, it seems. I mean, drums, like you said, is one of the hardest things to record, it seems like, in theory. For me, the very first thing I want to do is make sure that, first of all, the drum set is sounding good. Just like any instrument, you want to make sure the strings are changed. You want to make sure your voice is sounding good. So that's the thing. You want the instrument to be as sounding great as you can before you put mics on it. So for me, I always want to make sure that the heads are changed, brand new heads, if not at least fairly new. The biggest mistake that I've seen in the studios and some different things, even live, is the heads are just trashed. They've been on since they first got the kit, 2 years ago, and so make sure you change the heads out.
And that's not too expensive. I know it's going to cost some money, but what's a good ballpark for just the typical set, to give people some perspective?
I would say $50, depending on what kind of head you get. Yeah.
So you're saying $50 can improve your drum sound?
Oh yeah.
That quick? Yeah.
Easy. And I might do some sort of tutorial at some point regarding how to tune drums and such. But new heads, it does a world of difference. I've always believed that you can get buy a J.C. Penney drum kit, put new heads on it, it's going to sound good. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on things, but that's the number one. I guess the number two thing that I see that's a big mistake, or at least I'm still learning, is just mic placement. The type of mic helps, obviously, and the preamps and all these different things, but the mic placement, I've seen mics right up against the drum head before. I've seen them a little bit farther out. I've seen kick drum mics all up against the beater head. I've seen some outside the kick drum head. So all these things help. And in fact, mic placement really is half the battle. I mean, mic placement is EQ in a sense, So, but if you can get all that sounding great before you go to tape or start recording, it's going to make your life easier as an engineer, I've found, when you're trying to put EQ on things or drop EQ or boost EQ, whatever you're doing. So, yeah, number one, new heads and mic placement.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Mic placement, it's the key. It's the easiest thing, too. It doesn't cost anything to change your mic placement. So, plus, we can always be learning about it and getting better. And there's different, styles of mic placement. So, you've done a lot of drum recording. The biggest thing I see is where people place overheads for your drums. So there's whole different schools of thought on how to do it right, and maybe that even depends on the genre, and maybe they'll change. So, maybe explain kind of how some people do XY, some people do space pair. There's all sorts of different techniques. What have you found that you like on your kit and your style of play?
Right. And in fact, I'm always actually sort of playing with that a little bit. I don't know if you can see back here now. I've got them right now. I've got them behind my drum kit, actually almost right above my head. And in fact, a lot of live, recording, you see the overhead sort of right above the cymbals, sort of out front. what I've learned, I've done that in here too, and it depends actually even what sound I'm going for, what kind of, what kind of kit sound you want, I guess. But so far, the best setup that I've used is right above my head, XY, maybe a half inch from each other, facing down, almost in the middle of the drum kit, right above the bass drum. And it just brings the kit to life. I just pan it left and right, obviously stereo. There's something called Recorder Man. I don't know if you've ever used that, Graham.
Yeah, two mics, right?
Yep, two mics. You take two sticks on top of each other. You're sitting there, and you might even want to take a piece of string, and so there, the phase is an issue. But yeah, just right above the snare and one almost behind you facing in. That does well. And I've seen even that being it. Recorder Man sort of setup before, and the drum kit sounds amazing. So I mean, if you can get the overhead sounding good first, that seemed to be the best for me. Getting those things sounding great as a drum kit, as one instrument instead of all these different components, and then sort of bring in the snare and the toms and the kick drum underneath that.
Yeah,
it's sort of
That's super helpful, man. That makes a lot of sense. So like a lot of people that are like on my site, let's say, are one-man operations, right? So we're a singer, we're the songwriter, and we have our home studio, and we're instrument based. So like I'm a guitar player, and so I'll write and record all the guitar parts. So I'm not a drummer. So let's say someone is just doing some drum loops for themselves, or using a virtual drum instrument or something, and they don't have access to a drummer, let's say. What's something that we can take away from, like, you think like a drummer, so not only can you play drums, but you would probably set up loops and virtual drum instruments differently because you know how drums should fit in an arrangement. What's something that we could take away? Because I don't think about drums well because I'm not a drummer,
Right.
Does that make sense?
So as live drums, or just if you're in the studio programming drums and loops, or both?
I guess either one. Let's say just with loops and programming yourself. Let's say you don't have access to a drum kit at all.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of discussions on blogs about humanizing the drum loops. I mean, that's really it. I mean, you want the drummer to sound like it's an actual human, especially if you've got this nice organic thing that you've built together. Especially if you're a home studio owner by yourself, layering everything yourself. You're doing most of the recording, so it's going to sound human. Obviously, it's going to sound very organic and natural. Then you put this loop on top of that, and you spend hours programming the loop, and it just never sounds quite like a human because it isn't. Now, there's going to be some great sounds there. So I don't know. I don't have all the answers to the virtual drum world as much. In fact, that's if I were gonna program a loop, I would probably still add some live drums on top of the loop just to give it that human feel. But which I do quite a bit. In fact, I've got a guy out of Seattle that I think Brandon. He's got some stuff I'm working on right now that he's got some loops there that sort of have that foundation. But then I just lay a drum kit over top of that, and it just has this really this is the glue that it needed, as far as that extra human drummer, because my big passion has always been playing in a band, and there's nothing that's going to ever replace a band in a studio together playing together, in my opinion. So I just like to play the drums to anything. I love when I listen to a drum, when I listen to an album, I come from the old days where I like to look at a cover and still look at who played on the album and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of why I'm doing what I do, I guess. So yeah, I don't know if that I might have went out on a tangent there, but I don't know if that answers. But yeah,
right. The hard answer is that real drums sound better.
Yeah.
But it depends on genre, and it depends on style. So that's not always the answer, and you can do a lot on your own these days with programmed drums. And like you said, I try to do a lot of stuff on my own too, where I'll program and do loops. But let's say someone then is at the point where they're recording themselves, they've maybe done some loops, but they know that, what, man, if I just had not only good sounding drums. You know, if I could not record good sounding, but I don't even have a drummer, I don't even play drums or access to a kit. That's where someone like you would come into play, right? So maybe explain, like, how would someone benefit from your, like, how would I'm writing a song on guitar and I tracked everything even into Pro Tools and it sounds great, but I don't have drums. Well, how would I get you to not only play drums but record the drums and put it into my song? How does that work?
Well, there's a couple ways. You know, it's worked best for me, it seems, so far. Well, first of all, there's a songwriter. You're working on your things. You've got some rough tracks, maybe even final tracks. But there's been basically two ways that I've done it so far that's worked good. And that is, number one, the songwriter or the band or whoever, producer. It doesn't have to be necessarily a home studio, but mainly if you're at home working on things, and you're just not sure what direction the song is going yet, but you've got a basic foundation of the guitar tracks, maybe some vocals, maybe a bass line, maybe even a loop that you feel that works. Send it to me. You know, it's really easy to do. You can send it to Dropbox.com or whatever. I think you send it. There's a bunch of different ones. And then you know, I lay down the drum tracks pretty much just raw, send them back. That way you can just take that drum kit if you like it, EQ it to taste, mix it to taste, and then play the final tracks on top of the drum kit, because then, you know, it's just going to sound like a band. You know, you're going to be able to gel, just like if you be playing the guitar to a loop or a click track. It's almost the same sort of gelling. But on the other hand, I've done it before where everything's finished, everything is completely final except for the drummer, and so I can do that too. Really, either way, you know, it just depends on the direction of the tune and, you know, where the song's headed, that kind of thing.
Got you. So you're saying, like, you know, if someone's listening in right now and they want to send you some tracks, in essence, they can send you like an MP3, maybe even of just like a basic mix that you could then reference in your ears, and then you're tracking the high quality, you know, WAV files, multi-track drums, and that's what you're delivering back to the client to then mix as if they had tracked it in their own studio.
Exactly. That seemed to be the best. At least most clients I've worked with so far like the drum submix, but they still want each track. So I normally do about 8 tracks, room mic, sometimes hats, depending on the tune. If it's more of a jazzy hi-hat driven tune, I'll do a hat mic. But mostly room mic, you know, and your typical 6, 7, 8 mics for the kit, and I'll just have them separated out. Yeah, but what I'll do first is send an MP3. Hey, do you like it? Is this in the right direction? Sure. You know, if it's not, then we'll try again. And it's cool because there's really no pressure either way. You know, you know, if it's not working, you know, no harm done. You know, but yeah, I just do an MP3 quick just to see if we're on the same page, email it back and forth. If we are, WAV files, they can just import them right into their session, and then they can mix the taste. I can also mix the drum kit too, but sometimes it seems like you want to sort of mix the whole thing in context, you know, with the tune.
Sure. So in essence, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's outsourcing the performance and recording of one element, while at the same time, if they still want to mix it, you know, themselves with their own feel,
right?
They're just getting a human drummer in their studio, basically.
Right. Yeah. And just like Easy Drummer and some of these, I think they're really good programs. But it's the same thing. When you get Easy Drummer, I believe you just pull the tracks right in, right?
Yeah, you can have the multi tracks to mix them all. Yeah.
And mix the taste. So that's the idea, and I'm committed to getting the best drum sound. It's the hardest, you know, like you said, the hardest thing to record, it seems. Yeah. So my sort of specialty is recording drums. Yeah. So I'm hoping to continue to get better at that. Yeah. And, you know, and sites like yourself have certainly helped, cool. You know, do that. So that's the idea, and continue to get better drum sounds. Even though they're raw, you can still get great drum sounds without doing a bunch of EQ. So it just makes everybody's life easier. It's sort of my goal. So
yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, I mean, I can vouch. Obviously, Travis is my friend. He's a great guy, but he's one of the most, you know, technical and precise drummers. So not only does he play well, has a good feel, like he thinks like a drummer, and you know, you love drums and you study drummers and they're different styles. So you're kind of perfect for this type of thing in that you could handle almost any kind of genre or song, because not only are you capable of playing, but you think and arrange in your head like a drummer. So if anyone's looking, if you're listening and you're looking for drum tracks, like he was saying, if Travis was saying, if you've spent all this time recording and everything has this great, natural, organic, musical feel to it, and then you throw a loop on it, if the loop's just not working or you don't have access to even tracking drums well, this might be, Travis and Silver Lake Studio might be a good option for you to just totally bring in professional drum sounds that are custom for your song, and that might take it to the next level. So it's silverlakestudio.com, right?
That's it. Yep.
And Travis has also he writes articles that are helpful for drummers, recording drums, tips. So he's also adding content that can help you think about drumming and recording the studio, as well as the service that he offers. But you should definitely check it out. I like the stuff. I like the dude. And yeah, Travis, I appreciate you helping us out today talking about drums, and it's been great.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thanks again for doing this. Like I said, you've been a huge help, obviously, over on your site. So helping people save money and make great recordings, that's the key. So
good, man. Yeah, well, I appreciate it, man. I'm gonna send people to your site, and when people go check it out, and then if anyone has questions, maybe about what we were talking about today, or maybe about recording drums, maybe even if they're still, they may not want to use your service, but they want to get better at recording drums. You're kind of an expert.
Definitely.
Can they ask you questions? And is there a good email address on that website to ask you?
There is. It's just Travis@silverlakestudio.com is a good way to get me. But yeah, absolutely. I'm here to help either in recording or, like you said, just helping if you're going to be taking the whole band to a studio and you want to get the best sounding drum kit. Hopefully I can help. Yep. So in any way.
Awesome.
Be glad to.
Sounds great. Thanks, Travis. I appreciate it, buddy.
You got it, man. Thanks, Grant.
Have an awesome day.
Take care, man.